the worst thing that Biden could have done was actually go to Ukraine on President's Day. On President's Day, he went to Ukraine, pledged billions of dollars of support for Zelensky and the Ukraine military, but he never went to Ohio.
Hey everyone, welcome to our Traded Black podcast. I am your host, Shad Dales. Thanks for checking in. Busy week to say the least. A lot of stuff building up over in Ukraine, which leaves a lot of investors on the sort of nervous standpoint. But let's jump right into that. Let's welcome in our two co-hosts as usual. Ben Smith, our lead financial writer. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see everyone here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Anthony Vero joins us as well. How's life in Florida? Nice weather this time of year, I bet.
Hot. It's warm. It's warm. It's hot again. Summer's already here.
What's the weather like? What's the weather like down there this week?
It's probably like
82 degrees.
That's not that bad.
It's hot. I mean, I sweat walking my dog.
I can't relate to
What
that.
kind of dog do you have?
I've got two 50-pound pit bulls.
Do you? All right. All views in the Traded Black podcast, the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or guests as investment advice. The views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. Okay, so let's begin. It's like as much as I want to be light-minded and make this somewhat a not so serious podcast, we begin things on a serious note. Because there's really no other way of putting it. The war in Ukraine is getting pretty serious, guys. Russia is conducting the nuclear-ready drills while removing itself from the START treaty. And U.S. gave Ukraine the green light to attack assets in Crimea and is considering sending fighter jets to them. Ben, what's your take? Like, how concerned should investors be about this overall escalation?
Yeah, we talked about it on previous podcasts. I personally, because I follow this stuff rather closely, I'm fairly concerned about it. Concerned enough where I think it is affecting market performance, and it's really sort of like the black swan element. While no one thinks that this is going to go nuclear ultimately, I think that there is definitely a risk of some sort of escalation. And that's something to be mindful of your portfolio, because if it does, then we don't know where this could end. There could be a tit-for-tat situation. It might be limited. It may not be. But, we're talking about the U.S., possibly sending in fighter jets. Like China's allying with Russia as well. So I don't know. Hopefully it de-escalates and that we can just go on as business as normal. But I think investors should be mindful of the fact that escalation could bring untold consequences, and that's something you should be thinking about when you talk about allocation of how much you want to put into the market right now.
Anthony, do you think investors, look, I agree with everything that Ben's saying, they should be mindful, but is this, you're shaking your head. What do you think?
No, I mean, to be honest, I'm pretty sure this is all political theater now. I don't think you're going to see any escalation, regardless if we send fighter jets over there or not. I mean, it's posturing. It's good political rhetoric for Biden. I mean, it's good political rhetoric for Putin. But I mean, if you read the headlines this morning, I mean, China was there trying to broker a peace deal, which will have no unilateral sanctions. It'd have a ceasefire, and then China would basically be getting the goodwill of the world with brokering peace in that region. I mean, Russia's already pretty much got the Donbass and Crimea, which is what they want. I mean, they've had ports in the Donbass for centuries now. Give Putin what he wants, ceasefire, stop bombing Kyiv, and then just get out of there, and we're on our way. I mean, China don't want war. I've said it a bunch of times. Like, China doesn't want war with the U.S. China does not want war with Russia and Ukraine. China wants to just sit there, grow, and develop their consumer economy, which is what they've been well on their way to be doing. I mean, I don't think this is going to escalate. I think it's a media field day with these headlines. It's good politics for Joe Biden. But I mean, ultimately, I think there is going to be some sort of resolution here in the next 6 to 12 months.
One of the people we spoke to this week that actually has a direct contact with Zelensky's North American representative, is that correct, Ben? What would you classify that person who we spoke with this week that basically said that come April, the war will be decided, meaning the outcome. What that is, we don't know. Yeah. But that's the source that we're hearing, is that come April, the outcome of this war will then be decided.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, war is very unpredictable. So I don't know if that's something really you can bank on. I agree with Anthony insofar that ultimately I don't think it will come to what I said. But it's just something to be mindful of. Obviously this week we've seen the market very jittery on the headlines from that. So it definitely had an impact on the market more above and beyond just inflation and the risks there. So investors are definitely paying attention to it. I think they'll broker a deal somehow. I don't see this as a very winnable situation for the U.S. Basically, the whole world is against it. I think something came out in the New York Times, which basically said that the whole world is against the U.S. right now. Even domestically, I think support for Biden in this war is like 18 or 19%. It's very low. Unlike what you think you see in the media and everybody's supporting Ukraine, real support is actually very low for this war. And I don't think it's a very winnable situation for the U.S. anyway. So, hopefully they.
It's not. Yeah. It's not a winning situation for the U.S. And you know why everybody's pissed off at us and nothing that we're reporting here is because everybody thinks that we blew up the fucking Nord Stream pipeline. I mean, I know. So, well, I did. You didn't, luckily. So, I mean, that pissed off Germany. I mean, that pissed off Russia. Let's be real. I don't want to get too crazy, but that's an impeachable offense if Biden knew exactly what the CIA or whoever we sent over there to do
Why was that done?
I mean,
why was that done?
To cause uncertainty. Yeah. I mean, to cause volatility. I mean, it could have been I mean, I don't really want to get too down the rabbit hole, but I mean, the U.S. are pretty good at doing false flag operations. We've done them throughout the past 50 years, several times. And I mean, this isn't really out of the ordinary for how we act. It's kind of like standard operating procedure for what we really do on a global and on a thematic stage. I don't see we're going to be the biggest losers in this. Ukraine can't win. We just keep doubling down and just sending money overseas. Meanwhile, we're not sending any money to places like Ohio and investing in infrastructure in this country. So it's a lose-lose situation right now for Biden because everyone's pissed off domestically, everyone's pissed off abroad, and then he's just doubling down.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say on this before we move on, because I know we have other things to talk about, is you're absolutely right about Ohio. I think the worst thing that Biden could have done was actually go to Ukraine on President's Day. On President's Day, he went to Ukraine, pledged billions of dollars of support for Zelensky and the Ukraine military, but he never went to Ohio. It was only after the fact, like 2 or 3 weeks after, they sent Pete Buttigieg, and it took him forever to even get FEMA support there. So that was very, very, very bad optics, and it is what it is.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching Tucker Carlson last night. I flipped through all of the channels. I'll go from like CNN, Fox News. I like to kind of watch everything. And he had Marjorie Taylor Greene on there, who I think is fucking crazy, like batshit crazy. But with a stone cold face and with a level head, she looked into the camera and said, look, we don't want these wars abroad. The American people do not want to support Ukraine. The American people do not want to keep these military operations going on across the globe. Like, we need to invest in domestic policy. We need to invest in the people that are in this country. And that is what the people want. The people don't want this military industrial complex just keep on profiting off of our turmoil globally. And I mean, she's right. Like, it's a bipartisan agreement at this point. We don't want this shit anymore. Like, the Team America World Police it's over. Like, we just got to let it die.
I'm going down this road a little bit more, and I know you want to skip to the next topic, Ben, but anybody but the Dems, it appears it's going to like unfold in the next presidential election. Who represents the Republican Party in all this? Like, you do think it's Trump?
Unfortunately, yeah. I think DeSantis has gone too far right, coming after abortion, being very outspoken against the gays in Florida and coming after Disney World, coming after African-American studies in Florida. He's checking off all of the boxes, and DeSantis has already kind of turned somebody off like me, who I sit in the center. Like, I agree with both sides of the aisle. DeSantis is just as crazy as Trump in different ways. I think Trump is batshit crazy too, though. But then when you look at the people that are potentially putting their hat in the race, I mean, Mike Pompeo, fuck that. He'll start a war in Russia tomorrow. Like he's Dick Cheney and George W. all over again when it comes to foreign policy. The people are saying that Nikki Haley is going to put her name out there. I don't, for the first time ever, I don't think there's going to be a single viable candidate on either side that enter the race that anybody's going to be like, all right, like I would gladly vote for that person. Or you vote for Biden. I mean, this country's a joke.
Say, what's that say about the state of the country and the direction it's headed?
What do you mean it's a fucking joke?
It's unfortunate with the way things are. Like, what has happened? But, you know, it sounds crazy to say
textbook
this, but
like crumbling.
Is Trump realistically going to be reelected again? And people are like, of course, but I can't wrap my head around that. But
No. Reelected again? And you asked who I thought was going to run for the Republican Party.
You don't think the Republican's going to win the election?
So Biden, I really don't like, but at the same time, he hasn't really done anything that's irreprehensible as far as everything is concerned. Like, I don't agree with some of his policies.
Ben, I see you shaking your head.
I would tend to disagree with that point, but
not as okay. So he hasn't done anything bad enough to where I would solidly say that I think Trump should be put back in office. Trump is a liar. He's a liar, and he really is an autocrat.
I think people turn like a blind eye though if it means money in their back pocket, because look at the cost of living.
No, it's not. Wall Street's not going to vote for him. Private equity's not going to vote for him. All the big guys that he had donating to him the first time around are fucking gone. Ken Griffin was like, Donald Trump's a joke. Ken Griffin, I'm pretty sure, was Donald Trump's top 3 donors in the last election. All the big money's like, we're fine no matter who's in office. We're not putting that lunatic.
Where I think Trump really hurt himself too, rightly or wrongly, without getting into it, is that his position on the vaccine. He really supported that the whole way through, and rightly or wrongly, his base is largely against it, and I think that turned off a lot of his base because his continued insistence of supporting that.
Yeah, you take out January 6th and you take out 90% of the shit he did around COVID, I'd vote for him again.
Let's talk about interest rates and inflation. Most people and the Fed expect inflation to go down, possibly the Fed's long-term inflation target of 2.8%. However, China and Russia control a stranglehold of the world's energy, fertilizer, and rare earth metals markets. So as the dollar basically debasement continues, saying all this, Ben, would you say the good times of the 2% trend inflation are over? Will we see that again?
Yeah, no, I think they're definitely over for largely for that reason that you mentioned. Russia and China control a large swath of the market in terms of fertilizer, energy, and also rare earth minerals, which are pretty expensive components that go into all the electronics. So I think China owns like 90% of that market or something like that, and the U.S. is way behind, and they're scrambling for coverage in that area. So I think the old target band that the Fed, it was 1% to 3%. 2 was really the trend target. I don't know if that's attainable anymore. Just because if the conflict between China does intensify, which it has been gradually over the years, it has been intensifying. Will they hold back some of their production? And a lot of the manufacturing base is already sent to China. So it's not even in the U.S. anymore. So they could easily use trade as a weapon, as a war, for consumer goods that end up importing back into the U.S. So, yeah, I think if we can get to like a 3% long-term trend, I think that's a little bit more reasonable. And in fact, there's some people saying that the Fed is now targeting 3% as a long-term trend instead of 2.
Thoughts on that, Anthony?
I mean, I kind of agree. I pretty much agree with Ben. I think China's going to use trade as a weapon. China, through the Belt and Road Initiative, is already heavily invested in Africa, where they're pulling most of the rare earths out. We haven't invested in Africa, unlike them, or South America for the most part. So, I think China's going to use trade as a weapon. China's been skilled in trade for centuries. They know the playbook. These people don't fuck around. They're not like us. We cut our nose off to spite our face daily. Ultimately, they're probably going to win if they decide to use trade as a weapon. And watch, they broker peace between Russia and Ukraine, and that kind of sets the momentum for the globe kind of deleveraging from the USD backed petrodollar, and people start to trade more in yuan. If that happens, we're in trouble.
No, I might add just one small thing too. The war in Ukraine, just to quickly backtrack there, is could have an impact on whether the BRICS currency that they're trying to create through the basket of BRICS nations and that currency, whether it elevates and gets stronger over time, and whether the US dollar decreases depending on the outcome of that war too. So I think it's important for people to be aware of the outcome there can affect the currency prices over here and which currency predominates over time depending on the outcome and what happens there. So that's also something that if you're more macro focused, to pay attention to.
Let's pivot to crypto. News this week, Coinbase is currently working with IEX, or are they? There's been reports this week that they could be working with them. For those that don't know, IEX is a U.S. stock exchange, and rumor has it they're planning to create a federally regulated crypto exchange platform. So, Anthony, first off, do you believe these rumors?
I mean, I think there's probably some truth to them. I mean, I know that Coinbase came out and said that they weren't true at the beginning when they first broke. I think it'd be a great story for the sector. It'd be a step in the right direction. However, it's also very opaque as to what a federally regulated crypto exchange would look like. I don't know how the sentiment would be from people in the current marketplace. I mean, people will go to probably high lengths not to transact on a federally regulated crypto exchange. That being said, it would also garner the interest of institutional money, probably a lot of retail investors, and I think it would be a net positive for the sector. So, I mean, I'm going to look at the headlines as they develop and kind of form my thesis.
So the big takeaway overall is that this would be a good thing for the industry.
Yeah, it'd be a good thing in theory. Like I just mentioned, it all depends on what those regulations and restrictions look like. I mean, I'd have to assume that it would look like something like TD Ameritrade. So you'd open an account, you would KYC, they'd have your information, you'd link it to a fiat bank account, and then you would transact, and everything would be recorded, and you get a 1099 at the end of the year with your trading activity. Everything would be FDIC insured. Up to $250,000, and you can sit there and sleep at night knowing that your money is insured by the federal government. They're answering to regulators, and there's no funny business going on. So I mean, I think it would be a net positive. But like I said, let's see what it actually looks like.
Yeah, I think the rumors are true too, because if people recall, BlackRock invested in Coinbase. I'm not sure what the exact stake is, but they're in union with them, right? So when BlackRock gets into something, you can bet that they know what the roadmap is and where it's all going. So, I don't know if they could deny the rumors now or whatever. That's not unusual. Maybe they don't want people to know now before concrete details transpire. But I think that this is the direction that it's going to go.
Well.
Yeah, and I mean, there's studies out there that have looked at capital inflows into the crypto markets, and if you factor in sovereign wealth funds, companies like BlackRock, pension funds, and money abroad, if you only had 1.5% of that capital injected into the crypto markets, you're looking at like $500,000 Bitcoin and like $12,000 Ethereum. So, I mean, yes, it could be a net positive, but you never know.
I look at advisor shares as well. They launched their Bitcoin ETF, what was it, last spring, under the ticker symbol CRYP, which trades on the New York Stock Exchange, which I don't think has gotten a lot of attention. There's more and more information I'm learning about that, but it'll be curious to see if you see more and more of a trend with the overall industry pivoting in that direction. I do want to touch on Coinbase and their earnings. Q4 net revenue of $605 million, $17 million more than analyst estimates of $588. However, the company's revenue and trading volumes were declined significantly, leading to a net loss of $557 million. Massive losses on the fiscal year. So, Anthony, why was the trading volume, you think, down so much?
I mean, we're in a bear market. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. It's like sky is blue.
Nothing to do with the company specifically, just the overall industry is what you're saying or thinking?
No, I mean, there's nothing to do with the company. I mean, I think Coinbase is top 3 ran companies in the crypto sector. I mean, Coinbase is like a bastion for like what crypto exchanges and how companies should be run. It's just a bear market. And I mean, the real people that are trading crypto aren't trading on Coinbase. They're trading on DEXs and they're trading on Binance. It's just a function of the sector. Like we said last week, I mean, if you look at the crypto markets as a whole from a macro perspective, only 13% of the volume and 13% of the assets in the entire crypto ecosystem are US based. And that doesn't really move the needle. So, I mean, in a bear market, yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised the numbers are down whatsoever.
You see the same thing happen in equities too, with like retail participation in bull markets. E-Trade will report, stellar accounts growth and stuff like that, trading volumes. And in bear markets, it just goes the other way. A lot of people underwater, they don't have as much money to trade, so less frequency of trades. And also, I think it's important to note that a lot of people went off chain, or is probably a significant portion. I don't know what that would be, but they went off chain. They took their assets off of exchanges like Coinbase and Binance, and they just put their Bitcoin in cold storage, so they didn't have the opportunity perhaps to trade. Because if you remember, the revelations came out during the crypto winter that on their filings that said that depositor money in Coinbase could be considered Coinbase's money in a bankruptcy proceeding. So I think that spooked some people, and then a lot of people brought their Bitcoin off chain.
Mm-hmm. Let's pivot now to psychedelics, and it appears that the clock has struck 12 for one company in particular, but some interesting news involving two well-known companies in the space, I should say. Let's first start with Field Trip Health, who announced earlier this week that they will bring in and hire an independent committee to explore strategic options. Reason why: unfavorable capital market conditions, ongoing fixed costs associated with their brick and mortar locations, regulatory changes going at a certain pace. We've talked about this in the past, gents, about how some of these well-funded companies and their burn rates through the roof with no real model in place. So this is a big learning curve and lesson being taught for investors in this space. But first off, Ben, what'd you make of the news regarding Field Trip this week?
Yeah, it didn't surprise me at all, because capital preservation in this industry is paramount. We speak to a lot of people. We cover the industry. We speak to a lot of people under the hood in the back channels, and it's tough right now. It's tough for these companies to raise money. Very few can do it in the capital markets right now without diluting themselves to smithereens. And obviously, if it was a better situation and it was easier to raise money, they probably wouldn't have gone through this, because they would have just raised and enough capital and put more money back into the operations, and then eventually, as the sector grows, they would dig themselves out of it and become cash flow generating over time, or that would be the theory. So. Yeah, it's just purely a byproduct of bad capital market conditions, and if they can't raise enough money to continue operations, then they have to look at strategic options, which is what they're doing. So how that turns out, I'm not sure.
What did you make of the news, Anthony? This is a company that you either have one side loves them, the other side's like, I don't know what it is. And after this week's announcement, it's proving to I think open up a lot of people's eyes. But what was your take on the feedback based on the press release?
It didn't surprise me at all. I kind of laughed when I saw it. I mean, my bullshit meter went off like through the roof when I met with them at several conferences and just interacted with the guys that were on the team. They reminded me a lot of the guys that decided to jump into cannabis, and the same guys that I saw crash and burn with cannabis assets that had a really good pace out of the starting blocks, and then they just failed. They seemed like shoddy capital allocators. I never really liked the strategy around Field Trip. It looked like something that was trying to cater to like the Hollywood elite or like actors and like a bunch of fucking bullshit, to be honest, around the Field Trip model. Not surprising at all. I would say that the acumen and the fundamental understanding for the business and for psychedelics and mental health, I would give them probably a D or an F compared to any of the other executives that I've interacted with in the psychedelics
Could you go into more detail as to how you feel about the whole situation?
Yeah.
Gee.
Yeah. it's gratifying. It's gratifying to me. I like being right about that kind of stuff. I mean, there's nothing that kind of gives me more gratification than looking at an investment, passing on an investment, and then being right down the road. And I mean, in the micro cap space and in the verticals that we deal with, like I've seen grifters in cannabis, I've seen grifters in blockchain, I've seen grifters in psychedelics. They all pretty much have the same profile. They all pretty much pitch the companies the same way, and you can kind of see the holes that are in those business plans. And 90% of the ones that have really, like I said, took my bullshit meter to the complete opposite end of the spectrum have wound up like field trip.
Well, we'll save this for another podcast, but when you say that you see holes, be helpful to know what some of that stuff is, because
like their first pitch deck with their clinics and their strategy and the way that they wanted to roll everything out, just the ethos of the whole program, it kind of read to me like something that you would go to like Hollywood, you go to like actors, you go to musicians, and then it's like very much like it was like hip and it was pop culture, and then it wasn't really about the medicine. It wasn't really about helping people. It looked like it was trying to be something that was cool, that was bringing psychedelics to like people at the top of the cone. It just didn't look sound to me like a lot of the other companies.
Well, the other news regarding the other company well known was Cybin Ben this week that's more focused on the drug development side. They announced that they laid off 15% of their workforce, again, due to ongoing operations costs not associated with clinical trials. So investors, be on alert. The next 12 months, these companies that, like I said, had a high burn rate, what do you think that they're doing as we talk about right now in this podcast when it comes to strategy, not only for today, but planning out as far as a model over the next 12 months to get through these times?
Yeah, these companies are cutting costs. Again, capital efficiency is key. Drug developers, by definition, are just cash burning machines, obviously. And so they're cutting where they can. And at least they're not doing it on the clinical side. So it shouldn't hurt their trials and trial preparation, developing a clinical plan and all that kind of thing, presumably. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of Canopy, where they just cut a few weeks back 800 head office people, right? And you have to wonder, with the trajectory of how that company was doing with sales and so forth, how much those 800 head office people actually helped, right? So, I mean, capital is essential right now. I think it's important too that these companies need to have enough money, either raise or conserve enough money if they have it on the balance sheet already, to get through phase 2B. That is the key, because really, from my experience, from the people we talk to, things don't get real serious until they get into phase 3, right? And then if they have good data going into phase 2B, then people really start paying attention. Then they'll have more opportunities to raise capital. More institutional players might come to the forefront. They might get partnership deals with big pharma. So a lot of these companies are in phase 2A right now, or just starting phase 2, or not even into phase 2B, like Compass is through that. So they need to get through the phase 2 sessions to really open up the opportunities for them.
Anthony, what's the biggest investing lesson that you take based off of these two announcements this week pertaining to the psychedelic industry?
I mean, kind of just be careful, due diligence, diversify, and I mean, learn to cut bait when you start to see it go in the wrong direction. I mean, Field Trip's been kind of falling upwards for some time now. Like this isn't exactly like a surprise to a lot of people. So I mean, it's kind of just be vigilant and be diligent vigilant on the back end, diligent on the front end.
Ben, do we see possibly well-known psychedelic companies dissolve in the next 12 months?
The ones with good research, I think, will find a way. How they do that is a little unclear right now with the state of the capital markets, but I think the good research companies will be there. Cybin will be there. They have enough, good clinical research to carry them through. Small pharma as well. They have $23 million. They'll be able to get at least some part way through phase 2Bs, and they'll be able to complete that. Awaken's there. They're very cash poor, but they're in phase 3 being subsidized by the NHS. So I think the main takeaway is, if you invest in good companies with good research, you always got to watch the dilution aspect of it and be careful of the price that you're paying for these companies looking down the road. But most will find a way through, and if the research fails, then they'll drop off. That's sort of the way it is. So the smaller companies, yes, anybody with good research will find a way to at least get to the next level and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see like what Ben said with those companies that he just brought up, like Awaken, Small Pharma. You're going to see a company like MAPS, Cybin, Atai, Compass just start gobbling them up, building a portfolio. If they fail, if they happen to get through those stages and they happen to get further capitalized, then they'll go on their way. But I mean, I see portfolio companies kind of forming in this space. It's the pharma approach. I mean, there aren't many pharma companies out there that are really just a couple of product lines. Like, they build portfolios. That's probably what's going to happen with a lot of these smaller, undercapitalized or research organizations.
Now, it's important too, Shadow, might add that some of the conversations we have, and investors need to know this, that just because don't look at the stock price necessarily and think that, oh, these companies will never get money because they can't raise at 8 cents or whatever.
No.
There are funds out there trying to raise money privately to get these companies over the line. So the capital markets isn't the be all end all. There are other potential sources of funding for these companies. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Well, we've had a lot of those conversations with some of those funds right now. Funds that are, doing 30, 40 million, but want to raise as much as $250 million over the next year or so. But Mindset Pharma, Small Pharma, Awaken, some of those companies that you just outlined, Anthony, seem to be at the top of mind as far as like an actually sound business model, which is interesting.
And you know why? You know why? Because the CEOs that are running all of those companies are actual doctors and actual people from the pharma industry. Like Carol at Small Pharma, she's one of the most impressive people I've met in the psychedelic space. Awaken has very, very highly... Awaken has very highly qualified human capital. Those are actual doctors and pharma people that know what they're doing. They're not attorneys or capital markets guys that saw, oh, psychedelics looks good. Let me put a business plan together and go take this thing public.
Doug Drysdale as well.
Like some of the other companies we mentioned. I think Doug's great. Doug's great. And I mean, Cybin slashing their workforce, I mean, sure, it's a short-term negative headline, but I'm not investing in a company where the CEO can't make those hard decisions. He has to do that for the betterment of the share price and the betterment of the company moving forward.
Last week, when we talked about the CDC report of 1 in 3 high school female students has contemplated suicide, 1 in 3, which is pretty staggering. There was more research, more stories pertaining to that, results, or I should say, study that was conducted by the CDC. And a lot of the blame, as no surprise, was due to social media. I don't know if what the right question is here. I'm not surprised that this is the direct result, but where are we going as far as and I'll start with you first, Ben, but when we look at 1 in 3 female high school students contemplating suicide and a direct result is social media, what next?
I don't know. I think it depends what perspective you're asking for. If you're asking for a parent, and I am the father of 2 young girls, 8 and 11, my strategy would be to delay allowing them a social media account for as long as you can, right, until the inevitable happens, right? So we're trying to set the stage for that. But there are different strategies you can employ. Either try to get off all completely, or limit it to a certain number of hours per day or whatever. But there's no question from the data, it seems that social media overusage of it is a big driver of these numbers, increase in depression rates because of the non-connectivity with people, right? Just interacting through social media and being exposed to all the shit things that happen in the world because the algorithms promote those because they get the biggest reaction is definitely weighing on people. And I would say, as a parent, try to limit exposure where you can.
Yeah, but
Anthony, real quick, do we see?
But 13-year-old girls aren't getting depressed because of the headlines in China. 13-year-old girls are getting depressed because they're getting probably malicious comments from other people, or they're getting feedback from people that they don't want, or they see that these beautiful women are all over social media and they want to look like that and they just don't. But I mean, unfortunately that's the way the world works. Like, there's beautiful people out there. There's also normal people out there. I mean, social media, you get out of it what you put into it. Granted, I mean, I might have a different mindset on this because I'm a 35-year-old male versus a 13-year-old female. But like, I use social media to extract information and to get my news. Like, I use social media to connect with people in like the crypto industry. I use social media to amplify my professional certain parts,
which
of my
is all
professional
good
career.
stuff. So
Like,
let me ask you this: do you
Yeah.
think social media companies are going to be like, we're poised for a big shakeup on what's being promoted and what's not? You don't see any change happening?
No, it's too big. It's too big a business. They don't fucking care. You think Instagram and Facebook care about those stats? No, they're going to say it's on the parents. They're going to say that you get out of it what you put in. I mean, I think it's kind of a brutal way to look at it, but I mean, maybe social media shouldn't be used, or maybe social media in the form that we use it should not be kids shouldn't be allowed to use it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously information overload. It's obviously too easy to connect, and too easy to critique, and too easy to put that out there. I mean, yeah, I'd hate to see what kids are doing with social media in middle school and high school, but if I had to guess, kids are probably Snapchatting and Instagramming and TikToking other kids doing things and then making fun of them, or being like, look how ugly Josie is, or look at this. Like, I remember like I hate to admit this, but like when we were in middle school, like there were a couple of kids like we used to like kick their backpacks that had those rolly bags just like for fun. I could see kids doing that, but like videotaping it, or like pranking kids and like videotaping it. And then it amplifies it, because it's not just that point in time. It now can go out to the entire school, or it gets put into group chats, and it just amplifies everything. So I can see how kids use social media in a toxic way. I think that's a well-said
point, is that same stuff's happening, but it's amplified all through social media, which I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they're getting depressed about the war in Ukraine. They're more so getting depressed because, I mean, bullying is amplified and magnified via those platforms.
Interesting feedback, to say the least. I'll let you guys run. Last thing I wanted to touch on was, did you guys see the take that Charles Barkley had about today's basketball players at the All-Star game last week, talking about how soft they were? And, you know, basically when you see fans tripping in the courtside, these guys asking these fans to be, I honestly, I think he's bingo. I think he's so accurate. You don't?
Okay, I'm going to start here. I'm going to start here because I went to my in-laws because there was a holiday here. It's President's Day in the U.S. And I was watching the game, and I was telling my in-laws, my brother-in-law, and whoever wanted to hear that I can't watch this. It was terrible, dude. And the reason is, like, just because you're allowing dunks all games and allowing unopened 3-point shots, that doesn't make it exciting to me. What makes it exciting is if you do a spectacular dunk over a defender on a legitimate defended play. There was this open season where people are just, passing the ball. It was a joke. It wasn't even a game. It was like a pickup game.
Yeah, but think about it this way. The All-Star game, the Pro Bowl, these are like nice to haves. If I'm a multi-million-dollar athlete, there's no fucking way I'm going full throttle in the All-Star game. There's no way I'm going full throttle in the Pro Bowl. Like, my body is my business.
That's fine, but full throttle is a long way from actually playing even 50%.
Agreed.
It was a total joke, dude.
But for Charles, I don't think they should have these things anymore, because the guys obviously aren't interested in it. There's no financial incentive. There's no competitive incentive. But for Charles to say they're soft, I would pay money for LeBron James to go in a fucking time machine and go play basketball with those guys, because he would own them. They would not be able. They would. Yes, he would. Oh, dude. Yes, he would.
Okay. Own them as in like aggressiveness, or just dominate the game?
Dominate the game.
Oof.
Yeah, because he's so aggressive.
Dominate the game. You think that those guys in the 80s could stop LeBron just going to the hole every time through the paint?
Yeah,
He's a fucking tight. He's a
He's
tight end.
He's a tight end playing in a stretch 4 league now. If you put him back into a very aggressive era, are you kidding me? He's thriving now more so than ever in the game that he's playing because.
Oh no.
Yeah, Bill Lambier, Shad, Bill Lambier, which we
Bill
grew up
Lambier,
watching,
Rick
would have put him on
Mahorn,
his
the
ass.
Celtics players, the Sixers teams, those those were physical fit. Like,
Dude,
look, I will say this.
LeBron, you don't think
I'll
LeBron?
say this till I'm blue in the face. Okay. Every player out there has talent and a skill set. That's what gets you to the league. But it's up here. And right now, I think we talk about the society and social media and how it's changing people. It's making us soft. And I look at Michael Jordan and conversations with LeBron about who the GOAT is. I fall off my chair even when somebody even brings it up. Like it's a joke. They're both extremely talented, but Michael would destroy him every single time because of his killer mentality.
You don't think LeBron is
not like mentality? Michael? Not even close.
Okay. I don't know the numbers, but if you actually look up LeBron's clutch shots in the playoffs, they're greater than Michael's.
Listen, all I know is that there was a good clip. There was a good clip on Twitter that I saw this week where it was Bill Lambier. It was probably the early 90s, and granted, it was Larry Bird, but he up-faked, somebody went up, and then he went to do a shot close to the rim, and Bill Lambier came down in a full chokehold, and then Rodman crashed into him, and then there was a huge melee, and Larry Bird ended up throwing the ball at him. That's what we're saying. They were tough back in the day, and that's why I can't watch basketball now, because it's so soft. It's all ticky-tack. There's no physicality in the game.
Game 4,
the All-Star game was terrible,
Finals.
It was terrible.
Game 4, Eastern Conference
I would take
Finals.
the top 5 players. I'd take the top 5 players of today and put them there. They'd smoke them.
No. Michael, Magic. Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. LeBron James belongs in the top 5 conversation, but he's not even close to being top player of all time.
He's the best. He's the best.
This is called the generation gap, boys.
It's totally generation. That's exactly what it is. I now feel older because whenever I was younger, you'd get those guys like just talking to you. You didn't know the type of baseball player that Willie Mays was. And I'm just like...
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Well, speaking of baseball, that's the only All-Star game that's actually worth watching now, because if you're throwing a 95-mile-per-hour fastball and like the pitchers do the same thing, the batters do the same thing. There's no playing at 25%.
You guys remember 2-3 years ago that as soon as like there was the NBA format was that if you got to a certain point total, whoever conference won meant the team would get home court advantage in the NBA Finals. And for about 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, it was the most exciting basketball I've ever seen in my life. Like, the defense was insane. And I'm like, why would they not keep that format in play? Like, that's... Like, those last 5 minutes, I'm watching the entire All-Star game to see that last 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, the best ancillary event in sports is the home run derby.
Isn't it?
Like, it's the best because it's all the guys that should be there. Like, the dunk contest is cool, but I mean... It sucks now. Like, LeBron should be in the dunk contest. I know. There should be other players that are in the dunk contest. It shouldn't be, what the hell is his Mike McClung or whatever won it. Like, in the 90s, it was Vinsanity and, like, guys that
he looked like that one YouTuber.
For real.
Dunker. I forget what his name is. But
yeah, but Michael's not better than LeBron.
I like the retro jerseys. They should bring back maybe some retro names in the slam dunk contest. Not guys that are in their 50s, but I'd love to see Vinsanity one more time in a dunk contest.
He probably can still.
Oh God, his last year before COVID when he was with the Hawks, that guy could jump up and stay up in the air. It seemed like for 3 seconds.
Yeah. That's still one of my favorite. That's my favorite Gatorade commercial ever. Was him with the Raptors.
Really?
It was a great commercial.
Huh.
He's literally playing basketball with rap like the Jurassic Park like Raptors and then like dunks on them.
Yeah.
It was a great commercial.
All right, gents, great stuff. Have a great rest of the week, and let's get back at it next week. Take care.
Talk soon.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.